Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Chelsea Roar with me, your host, as always, Ian Kelly, the podcast that I bring you for Chelsea FC fans by a fan for you, the fans. And today, you will notice I have a man on the show that you will all recognize, and this man is a proper Chelsea fan, the one and only David Chidgey. David. Well, we'll just call you Chidgey, actually.
Call me Chidge. Everybody else does, Ian.
Yeah, we call you Chidge. But we have to be formal at the start, my friend. The wonderful host and creator of the fantastic podcast, the Chelsea FanCast. It's great to finally have you on, considering, as you pointed out off air, that I've had pretty much all the rest of your cast members on so far. So
I'm a bit more elusive than them, Ian. That's what it is.
I know. I got you on a good day.
You did. It's really lovely to be on. I love what you've been doing with it. It's a really lovely. It's just a lovely, relaxed, no bullshit show, and I like that.
Well, look. To be fair, I got to be honest. I was inspired by your show as well. Obviously, I'm a big advocate for just that kind of laid back, chilled kind of conversation, and that's what you guys do. Chidge, why don't you? I suppose. You've a lot of listeners, but for a lot of people that don't know your background or may just be tuning in here for the first time, why don't you give us a little bit of a background on yourself, because that's how I like to kind of set the tempo on these shows.
Well, as we used to say in the early days of the FanCast, there are people yet to be discovered in the Amazon rainforest who don't know my story. But well, yeah, I mean, we started it in April 2008. Nobody really knew what podcasts were then. I mean, I was working as a TV director at the time, making some absolutely atrociously awful television, loosely on football. And I went to a party, and I can't even remember what it was for. It was in Movida nightclub, which at the time was a pretty, posy nightclub in Soho. And being me, I was kind of last man standing at said party, but I ended up getting drunk with a load of people who were from a company that was just setting up called Football FanCast, so they just set up. And we got talking, and it transpired that they were kind of a big website, but they hosted a lot of podcasts, and their aim was to have a podcast for every club. Sure. And of course, the first thing I said was, "Do you have a Chelsea podcast?" And they said, "Well, we did. But the blokes who did it have kind of all disappeared or given up or can't be asked." Now, as it happens, and I never used to reveal this, but I revealed it officially now, so I can tell you. But the original people who started the Chelsea FanCast for Football FanCast were none other than DJ from the CFC UK fanzine, Mr. At Only a Pound himself. And he had people that I've got to know subsequently have become really great mates, people like Kelvin Barker and Cliff Auger, who's the chair of the Chelsea Supporters Trust. So sure. They did it. They did about 20, 25 shows before I turned up. And then I turned up and made it into a decent show. Obviously, no, just joking. But
no, you're not. You're not. It's true.
Well, we started, as I said, in April 2008. And it was literally just before the second leg of the Champions League semi-final against Liverpool. So it was a really cracking time to start a podcast in a sense, even though we were literally starting it at the end of the season, but massive match. And there you go. And the rest is history, as they say. But, for me, it was very much about, I was making football programs for TV, and you would have executive producers, commissioning editors who clearly had no idea about football at all, and telling me how to make football programs. And that kind of went down like a cup of cold sick. So being a bit of a control freak and getting really annoyed at that, it was just perfect. Right, I can have a show that's mine. I can present it, so I don't have to try and get some idiot presenter to do it properly. I can write the script. And then the best thing of all is I'll get all my mates on who won't argue with me either, because they're my mates and they'll just trust me that I know what I'm doing. And that's kind of how it was. But what I was really interested in doing was doing what we've been doing at games forever. And this is why I wanted my mates on it, because in the pubs we would be talking bullshit, bollocks, nonsense about football and Chelsea in particular, and having a huge laugh while we were doing it and taking the piss out of each other. and occasionally having serious moments. There was that always, it's that mix that anybody who listens to or watches this show will know it. If they've been to a football match with their mates and they've been in the pubs, they know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And I wanted to put that authentically as I possibly could out there. As it happens, it was a podcast, but it wouldn't matter if it was TV or anything. That's what I wanted to do. And that's really been the mantra the whole way through, is to it's about being authentic. It's about bringing that football terrace / pub culture to the airwaves. And I think the best way to do that is to be authentic. And the best way to be authentic is to do it with the people that you go to the matches with. And I've always tried to stick by that.
I love that, because it's actually reminded me of a story we mentioned off air, that your last game that you were, your first game back was obviously the Brentford game. And that was the first time myself and my dad went to the bridge together as well. And it was funny because, in between halftime, we were kind of bickering with each other about difference of opinion. And then after the match over at the Butcher's Hook, we were, almost getting, I'm joking here, but we were really giving each other shit over, you see, my dad has a thing and he listens to all these shows, so I have to be really careful. But my dad has this absolute.
Hello, Ian's dad.
Shout out to Mick. He got a Canadaville shout out on the last show, so he'd be very happy now.
Nice.
We were kind of, he's a big Azpilicueta guy, and I'm like, you can't say anything bad about Azpilicueta to my dad, and I was kind of going, he's done, he's finished it. It's kind of.
How long's your dad been a Chelsea fan then?
My dad started in the Leeds Cup final.
So he's one of the originals in a sense.
Leeds Cup final, Leeds Cup final. Early 90s, he got me into Chelsea while I was in school. Like you mentioned off air, there was Liverpool or Man United, a little bit of Arsenal. But
that'd be Liam Brady's fault.
That'd be Liam's fault. Yeah, Terry Phelan didn't quite have the pull that Liam Brady had for us Chelsea fans, unfortunately. No. But so I was early. I kind of came in probably tail end of Kerry Dixon, if I remember correctly. Probably still a little bit too young to remember, but I remember my dad kind of banging on about Terry Dixon, or Kerry Dixon, should I say? And but really, when I kind of started to really kind of get my teeth into it was when Glenn Hoddle first took over. That was really when. So I remember like John Spencer. I remember watching the '94 Cup final against Man United, which I'd rather forget, and seeing Spencer and Peacock and all on the pitch. So they're kind of the players I remember, vividly.
Yeah.
But you're a Matthew Harden season ticket holder, right?
Well, actually, it's the 20th anniversary of me having a season ticket in the Matthew this season. So I got it for the 2002-2003 season. I mean, I've been going. I mean, I've got a kind of what I would say, compared to all of the mates that I've got that I know at the games, a very different kind of journey into it. I mean, I'm in awe of most of my mates. The people like Jonathan and Marco and Mark Meehan and all of those lot, all of them really, because most of them were born into it.
Jonathan Kidd, I need him on one day, man. I need that man has the best voice ever.
Yeah, you need to book about 6 hours though, Ian. I'm warning
yes.
you. I'm the only human being in the entire universe who's ever managed to get Jonathan to shut up. So and that's why I love him. But they were all born. I mean, Jonathan's dad was a Chelsea fan. Dan Silver's like 3rd, 4th generation Chelsea fan. So They were born into it. And a lot of them were like getting taken by their dads when they were 5, and they had no choice. They were Chelsea, and that was it. But I had a very different route into it, because I mean, I grew up, down here in Hampshire, in Winchester, near Winchester. And Dad grew up in Portsmouth, and he was a Pompey fan. And he took me to see Portsmouth. I think the first game I ever went to see was a Portsmouth game. I think they were in the 3rd division. And I was a very weedy little kind of 7-year-old at the time. And even though I was 7, I was old enough to realise that the football that was being played was absolute shit. And secondly, it was really violent, and I was scared stupid because I was only a small nipper,
Sure.
So I think I didn't really. I don't know what I said, because I can't remember now. But I think Dad kind of decided that football maybe wasn't for me. but which wasn't true because I always played football. I mean, as a kid, I did nothing other than play football, from dawn till dusk if I could.
Yeah.
And I played for a very rubbish team with a load of my mates because I wasn't very good really, and that was the reality. But I played football every weekend and in a team until I was 16. So my love of football really came from playing it. And I didn't really have a team, although Dad took me to the FA Cup semi-final in 1976. I don't know why he took me because it was Southampton. If he was a Pompey fan, he should have hated Southampton. So
Sure.
I don't think Dad was a very, good football supporter. Really.
So you have an affiliation to Mason Mount now, which might upset some of the Twitterverse.
Well, I mean, in a way, I suppose, but kind of third party, I suppose. But yeah, so I went to the FA Cup semi-final in 76. Southampton were playing Crystal Palace, and it's one of the first times I'd ever been to London. So I'd have been about 11 at the time, I think, and I just fell in love with it. I mean, just walking up Fulham Road, it just seemed so different from what I'm used to. I mean, it's very rural down here.
Sure.
And it was exciting, and there was a big crowd, and it was just the whole football experience, big police horses, the smell of horse shit and fried onions and burgers. And I walked into the Bovril, entrance, and we went all the way down to the front of the shed. So we were kind of very near the left corner flag, and I was right at the front. And I just was blown away. This huge ground, because it was a very open ground, a lot of space. The Greyhound track running around it, and the knackered old West Stand. I saw Brian Moore, the commentator, the famous commentator.
Yeah.
He kind of walked past us to go up to his commentary box, and I was just amazed by this East Stand, which of course was very new then. It was only about three years old. It just looked like the biggest thing I'd ever seen, like a spaceship. So I was absolutely enchanted by this amazing football ground, and the love of it really, grew from there really, but only vicariously, because Dad wasn't a Chelsea fan. Don't think he understood how much I really liked going there on that occasion. So he never took me. I don't think he never took me to another football match, actually, as I recall. But I in those days you couldn't watch football on the TV unless you watched Match of the Day or the Big Match.
Sure.
And I started to get into watching that a lot more seriously, and I decided that Chelsea would kind of be my team. I love the kit, the dark blue kit with the Umbro pattern down the side. Yeah. And Ray Wilkins was the captain, of course, because he was very young skipper, and I absolutely fell in love with him. He was a great player. So it all kind of started from that, but it was all very removed. It was only really watching it on the telly.
Sure.
And I wasn't a massive Chelsea fan. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it got a bit more serious in the 80s because I moved up to London to go to university in 84, and I ended up living in Chelsea, would you believe? And I used to go occasionally, because I like to get pissed, and it was like an extension of that. When you're like 18, 19, 20, either you've got a hangover or you need to get rid of it. And going out, let's go to Chelsea this afternoon. There's nothing else to do. Let's go there. That'll be a laugh. Be a bit exciting. Get nice and pissed. So occasionally I wander along there, but still I'm not completely massively, mental about it. It wasn't really until the late 80s. I'm getting a bit older by then, in my 20s, early 90s. I'm starting to really get into it then, and then I bloody moved back down here again. So my chances of going regularly, because I'm very lazy, Ian. If I'm not living 5 minutes from the ground, it's like, well, why on earth would I go? So I got married and moved back down here. And then my sister had the good sense to marry Dr. Mart, who was the guy who I started the FanCast with. And he, massive Chelsea fan, again, born into it. And, he said, you're a Chelsea fan? I said, yeah, but not a really good one. He said, well, I am. They said, do you go? And I said, well, I haven't been for a few years. And he said, well, look, we've got to go. He said, if you move back up to London, you've got to come back. And I said, all right, done. You have a deal. And I moved back up in 2000. And he kind of introduced me to all of his mob, including legendary characters like Psycho Phil.
Right.
You may or may not. Yeah, you might have
I've heard only.
Yeah. So Phil and his boys, Chris and Stu, or the Stu Norman, who you probably know from Twitter. Mm-hmm. Chris isn't really involved in Twitter anymore, but he was the celery terrorist. And they all became the team for the FanCast a few years later, So that's where it all started.
Why don't you why don't you actually, just on that there before, because that'll slip my mind. A lot of Chelsea fans, modern Chelsea fans, have actually asked me this question, but an old school fan like yourself, they've always asked me, what is it about celery? So why don't you fill the kids in?
Well, as it happens, Ian, in my garden, about no more than 40 feet away, I've just transplanted something like 65 baby celery plants, which I'm going to be planting hopefully next weekend, and to grow my own celery. So there we go. I thought that's the only thing I'm really precious about trying to grow. Everything else can live or die, but the celery has to succeed. Yeah. But what is it? Well, I mean, it all comes from the song, which is, everybody knows the song. And there are varying reports about how the song started. I mean, Marco's book's probably got the, I can't remember what he said in the book now, but there's a great book that Marco wrote. Here we go. Got it.
Yeah, shout out to Mark, 100%.
Yeah, here we go. This is a Mark Warren Walter Otten classic. There you go. If you haven't bought this, then you're not Chelsea. It's that simple. Yeah. But it's got the proper derivation of the celery song. But that aside, so if you want the real definition, you've got to read the book, basically. But my memory of it is that there was a tour to Sweden in the early 80s. It might have been about 80, 81, maybe 82. Can't really remember. But the legendary Mick Greenaway had a little kind of, kind of ghetto blaster. It's like a small ghetto blaster. And he had a cassette, which had some weird old kind of English musical songs. One of which was Ask Old Brown for Tea. So it was Ask Old Brown for Tea, Ask Old Brown for Tea if he don't come. And I don't remember the rest of the lyrics. Sure. But you get the idea.
Yeah. You get the melody.
Yeah. That got changed to, celery if she don't come, I'll take a lap on with it. And so basically I think it started on that Swedish tour. I mean, the book may say different, but that's my memory of it. And then basically I think people got really, of course, that in those days in the 80s also, you had a lot of you had a real craze for kind of like Man City fans. I think they would have blow up Fife bananas about this kind of big. Yeah, and everybody would be taking inflatables to games, right? Yeah, I mean, Chell Tell, who was another very early, member of the FanCast, had a blow up celery. He gave, I don't know what I've done with it, but he gave it to me. I've got this blow up inflatable celery somewhere. So everybody would take those to games, and I don't know how it started because I wasn't there, but my assumption is that Chelsea fans took it, as they often do, one step too far and actually brought in the real thing and were chucking it around at each other, and it became a real thing, And I remember when I went back, when I got back in about 2000, 2001, and then the next season, I remember we got to the cup final, and I remember going to Fulham to see the Fulham semi-final at Villa Park. And Martin and I, on the way up there, we cleared the supermarket of celery. I mean, literally cleared it. And I was sitting in the kind of the middle tier at Villa Park, but it was above the dugout. And I swear to God, I hit Jean Tigana, the Fulham manager, with a lump of celery.
Oh, beautiful!
So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it just became a thing, really.
And now you grow your own.
And now I'm trying to grow my own. I say it's going to be the next. If I'm successful, right, it'll be the next thing on sale at the CFC UK store. Homegrown Chelsea celery.
Next time I'll come over, I'll bring the beer and you supply the celery. Yeah.
I will.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, the other thing is, of course, it's in the Chelsea FanCast logo. That is our logo.
Of course.
It's a pint of Guinness. But that wasn't somebody being brilliantly mad and creative. What happened was I was doing a show at Putney Station, which is where we used to the bar we used to start. We started doing it, and I think it was Jason Cubbyduck. I think it was Jason, who was this brilliant bloke who was a member of the Chelsea fans in Toronto, the official supporters club there. I think he might have even chaired it for a while, but he used to come over for games quite a lot, and he would all. I mean, a lot of people in those days, they would turn up to watch us do the show because you could. Basically, we were in a little alcove and there were lots of benches around, and they would all come and they would heckle us and get pissed for the evening with us, which was great. Anyway, Jason turned up and it all got a bit mad, and he brought a load of celery and it was just chucking celery at me mainly, as well as the other guys. And I had a half a pint of Guinness and this big a couple of sticks of celery landed plumb in this half pint of Guinness. And I just said, there you go, it's Chelsea cocktail. And then we looked at it and we thought, actually, that would make a brilliant logo. And that's really where it came from.
That is genius. I love that. And me being an Irishman as well, of course.
Well, of course. Well, we all loved Guinness, you see. I mean, we did always drink Guinness. That was the thing. Or, I mean, Matthew Harding, well, actually, apparently Matthew Harding was more of a beer man, actually, from what I understand. But he did like a Guinness too, because he had that pint of Guinness, on his seat when he died, or in the centre circle, can't remember.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only thing is you cannot drink Guinness too much unless at a funeral or a christening. And it depends on your...
Or a wedding.
Or a wedding. It's got to be an occasion. It's got to be an occasion.
I agree with you there, Ian. And of course, you're probably too humble to say, but I can say it for you. You're not really drinking a pint of Guinness unless you're drinking it in Ireland.
Yeah. I gotta be. So,
yeah. Last time I had the chance to do that, right? Darren Mantle, Dazza, right? Dazza, again, another mainstay of the Chelsea FanCast for years. He got married. And he got married to an absolutely delightful girl called Denise. And Denise is from, now I always say this wrong. I think it's Cavan, but I could be wrong.
No, you're spot on. Cavan, yeah.
Okay. County Cavan.
Nobody in Ireland likes it except the locals. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit. Yeah, I better not say on air what it is. Off air, I'll tell you. But anyway,
it's a bit inbred. Sorry.
Well, that's not what I was going to say, but pikey was what I was going to say. But
okay.
I'm using this purely for illustrative terms. This does not represent the views of Ian or myself. We're not racist. But anyway,
lock, stock, and 2 cancelled podcasts.
Yeah, quite. Anyway, so we went to Cavan for Darren's wedding, and
it's actually a lovely area. Yeah.
Oh, Ian, I love all of Ireland. It's actually a part of Ireland I'd never been to, so I was really quite pumped to go there. And we went there, and we were all staying in this fantastic pub. We were staying in a pub, which is brilliant. Farnham House Hotel. But it was
yeah, I love those places. Yeah.
Right. So we're staying there, and we flew over, and Pablo was there, who you may or may not know. Paul Jeffrey, who's the Secretary of the Supporters Trust.
Okay.
Done a lot of great work during the whole bidding process. But anyway, Pablo was with us, me and my wife, and we got to the hotel. And I basically said, I've got to have a pint of Guinness before I do anything. So I got a pint of Guinness, and it was just like, nectar of the gods. And then Sarah said, you could just see the glint in my eye. She said, I think you're going to be here for a while, so why don't we have some food as well? I said, all right. Anyway, I was going to have like 2 or 3 pints and then just do something else. But what happened was other guests were arriving. And I knew most of them, like there's Andy Ray. I don't think he turned up that day actually, but anyway, never mind. Tom Motherway. These are people that Darren's known through Chelsea for years, and they're in the States, and they're all coming out. So you couldn't get away. So it's like, do you want a pint of Guinness? Yeah. Basically, that carried on from about 3 p.m. And I remember going to another, possibly 2 pubs, but I remember one pub, and I was with Richard, who does the the guy who runs the We Are the Shed group.
Sure.
And I remember turning around to Richard. It would have been about 1 a.m. And I said, Richard, I'm absolutely bollocks, mate. I said, I'm barely able to talk. I need to go home. I'm going to go home. And he said, no, Chidge, are you sure? Because you actually sound really lucid and fine to me. I said, no, mate, I'm fucked. I've hit my limit. And I staggered back from that pub back to the pub we were staying in. And I wandered upstairs. So my wife had basically bailed out ages ago, and I'd take an early night. And I wandered in there, and she said, oh, right, I wonder where you're going to be. I fancy going out. She probably wanted to have a fag or something. I said, I can't. And I literally just head planted on the bed like that, and that was me done for the night.
Game over.
I must have had about 13 pints of Guinness.
You know what? They're too easy to drink. That's the problem.
It was just like drinking, the easiest thing to drink in the world. It was gorgeous.
And then the older you get, it starts giving you a very weird shape where there used to be possibly a potential 6-pack. You know what I mean? But
I never had one anyway, mate, so I was all right.
That's why I said potential, because me neither. Me neither. Well, look.
So here's to Ireland and Cavan and the lovely people of Cavan, because we had a cracking weekend there.
Absolutely. Let's finish off with a little bit of because I know we're both kind of stuck for time. It's a Saturday evening. that were
Go on as long as I'm still awake, Ian, and all the listeners.
Oh, we're all good. Well, I've got a missus downstairs that doesn't go to sleep and she's hungry, so I'll be
fair enough.
I'll be I'll be I'll be in the sin bin.
We've already been doing it half an hour. We've hardly talked about Chelsea at all. It's my kind of podcast.
I love it though. This is what it's about, you know. But what I was going to get your interpretation. I have. This is obviously we're recording this on Saturday, so this will be out tomorrow, which will be Sunday when you lovely ladies and gentlemen are watching. But on Monday, I have secured Ben Jacobs on the show.
Oh, fantastic!
Who has done a fantastic job, I believe, during the whole kind of bidding process and pretty much fairly accurate with his transfer news and stuff like that. So let's talk a little bit about the kind of Todd Bowley stuff. I don't really want to get into this whole, what's the word, ridiculousness of you know, I'm trying to do Mr. Kidd himself justice here in a word that he would probably use, but I just don't want to implore any kind of notion of looking towards these people for any sort of resolution, if that makes sense, because all they are is like fear mongering, panic. Pandemic is over, people. Start enjoying life again, please. Chelsea have new owners. Todd Bowley, to me, seems like a good guy. We know that. Obviously, he has done an interview on Bloomberg, which, just for the record, I put a tweet earlier and said he'd done a fucking interview on a business channel talking about fucking business. And people thought, oh, well, that means he's not spending money anymore because he mentioned financial fair play and mentioned the Liverpool business model, which, let's be real, Chidge, this is kind of the way Abramovich was going anyway. At the tail end.
He'd been there and done it.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So for me, I'm kind of looking at this now. If we get Koundé over the line, or if this magical Barcelona money, which we know the Spanish seem to miraculously get out of nowhere all the time and then cry when, you know, Mbappe doesn't sign for them. If you don't want to play for Chelsea, well then sayonara. Thank you. Goodbye. No problem. You've heard of the Lukaku situation is the one I want to talk to you about, because it's the big, and this is, to be honest with you, what I'm going to focus on Ben Jacobs with, because he seems to know a little bit about it. And he also mentioned that Chelsea are starting to veer away from the loan option now and starting to really kind of focus on Skriniar possibly, or one of the players in a potential deal.
Yeah.
Surely we cannot allow, an 8, 9, 10 million euros a year loan deal for a player that we bought for 97 million pounds.
I'm not so sure, Ian. And I'll tell you for what. I mean, I think it's not simple. There's a lot going on in all of this, in terms of what's the right thing to do. And I think maybe start with that.
Well, I want them gone first and foremost. That's
yeah, exactly. I mean, I cannot begin to tell you how utterly fucked off and disappointed I am in Lukaku, because I won't lie. I mean, because I wrote bloody articles about it. So I can't ever kind of claim that I didn't say it was going to be because I was all for it.
No, me too. Me too.
I thought his stats across Europe recently. I mean, his stats across his whole career. He's a 1 in 2 striker. That makes him a world-class striker.
Yep.
He knew the Premiership. He knew Chelsea. He claims to be a Chelsea supporter. He had unfinished business. Then what was there not to possibly like? I even interviewed a really good mate of mine who's he's a real expert in the Italian game, and he commentates out there and he writes out. There's a guy called Sheridan Bird, who I've known for years. Absolutely. In fact, actually, funny enough, Sheridan Bird was the first guest on the first FanCast we did. So how about that? Anyway, so I phoned him up, recorded the interview with him to really get a sense of what we were getting. And he said, Lukaku's a changed man. He's been matured. He's a real leader. His whole all-round game has improved. He can hold the ball up. He can play other people in. He's almost Drogba-esque was how I would describe it in terms of what he can bring to the team. And we have seen Absolutely none of that. So, how can you predict that in a way? So that's massively disappointing. I think his attitude's been awful. I think he stunk the place out from what we're reading now. I mean, okay, how much truth is in it, we never know, do we? But
no,
from
until
if one goes, I mean, if one goes by one's read in the press, he and I've heard this from other sources too, actually, that he basically fell out with Tuchel early doors. He doesn't like Tuchel. I suspect probably because Tuchel makes him work hard. And I think he's a weird kind of guy. He's got a massive ego, right? Massive ego, but at the same time, a very fragile ego. So he's probably the kind of guy that has to be, oh, you're so fantastic, Lukaku. You're so great. You're the best player in the club. He has to be, loved to pieces. And yet, if he's challenged by, that's the antithesis of Tuchel. If you think about it, Thomas Tuchel is the ultimate team player. Yep. He likes to run it as a family where everybody is equal and everybody gives as much as they can and takes out of it the same amount. He's the head of that family, but he's not into individuals and he's not into egos at all. So you can easily understand why they clashed because, Tuchel's not going to treat him like, oh, you're my star player and I'm going to worship the ground you will walk on. He's going to say, no, get back in fucking line like the others. So you can understand why they clashed originally, right? And then there's the whole issue of Lukaku and his previous history with Chelsea, when frankly, I think he ran away.
Me too.
He could. This is the whole thing about the kind of weird conflict with Lukaku. Think always in terms of massive ego, fragile ego. Okay, that I think defines this guy.
Sure.
So I need to be top dog at the club. Okay, now Drogba's going. I missed that penalty against Bayern Munich in the Super Cup because massive ego. I want to be the hero like Drogba. Fragile ego. I fucked up and I can't deal with the failure of it and getting the blame. So he ran away, and he ran away because Eto'o turned up and other strikers turned up. Massive ego. I can't have that because I need to be top dog. Fragile ego. They might be better than me and I'm going to look stupid, so I'm going to run away. I think he's a coward, Ian, frankly. I think the guy is a 6'6", 16 stone lump of cowardice. I really do.
I believe.
I
agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that because of his previous track record with Chelsea, where he was at the club with when player power absolutely ruled it. If you couldn't cut it as a manager, the 4 or 5 big players would gang up on you and you would be out. So I think that Lukaku came back expecting that culture to be the same at the club. So I think he thought, right, I don't like Tuchel. I don't rate him. I'm going to get him out. And then I think he suddenly found, I bet we don't know this. So I'm kind of making it up, but it's kind of hypothesis.
Sure.
I can see him maybe going around the dressing room with some of the important players saying, what do you think of this Tuchel bloke? I don't rate him. Should we try and get him out? And I think he got a great big fat, who the fuck do you think you are? Yep. Suddenly he finds himself really isolated. He's now got a manager who hates him or he's not going to treat him like the god he thinks he is. And he's got his teammates who are not going to back him in a fight against Tuchel. So you got one isolated ego here. And then what happens? Now he's trying to play clever. He has the interview with Sky Italia, apologizing to the Inter fans and saying he wants to go back there, basically. And now we are where we are. I think that's what's happened. So he has to go, Ian. He is a bad apple.
No,
he needs to get out of this club.
I'm glad you said that, because for me, I don't care about the intricate parts of the deal, what we need, what the club needs. Look, Todd Bowley's come in with a clean slate. If he feels that we get X amount of money, but we get him off the wage bill, and also we get him out of the dressing room, which is actually more detrimental, and the fact that he's going to take a wage cut, well, people need to realize this isn't the same kind of old Bakayoko type of deal. This is him basically, Chelsea taking him off the wage bill and saying, right, you know what, that's enough. Let's not talk about Lukaku. Good riddance to the guys.
There's one other thing which is really to answer your original question.
Yeah.
I don't think it actually matters. I think that after, it's a bit like when you buy a car, there's depreciation. So they would have they don't pay 97 million quid up front.
Sure,
They pay a percentage of that every year.
Yeah.
So every year that amount gets written off. A bit more like having a mortgage, actually, I suppose.
Of course, yeah.
What is it? A capital repayment? Not that way. Anyway, whatever. You know what I mean. So that value. I mean, Ben will explain this to you far better than I can because he's clearly very switched on financially. But a lot of the price that we paid for him will have already been amortized, and then you've got to factor in effectively it's all been written off anyway because the club's just been bought for 2 and a bit billion.
With zero debts, exactly.
Yeah. So Bowley's going to come in. He's not going to take if he sells Lukaku for 20 million when the previous owners spent 97 million, he's not taking that 70 million loss. It's not his loss.
Exactly.
That loss doesn't technically really exist anymore.
Exactly.
As far as I can work out.
No,
so
I think you're spot on.
The money's irrelevant.
I agree. I think we need him out. I think we need more Kai Havertz in our club, more people like that who just embrace the culture. I mean, when we look at someone like, I don't want to ramble on here, but when we look at someone like Havertz, who was a little bit lightweight for a guy but then again, a young kid, what did we get him? 20, 21 when he came in, he's starting to fill out now a little bit. He's starting to put it up the players a little bit, which I like. He's starting to kind of engross himself into the Chelsea way, into the Chelsea culture. And when he grows into those bones, I mean, he's a 6'3" kid.
Yeah, and he's tough too.
Oh,
doesn't back down from people.
No. I
like that.
So I don't think strikers are top of our list. I don't even think attacking players are top of our list. I am not a Hakim Ziyech fan. I'm not going to lie. He's team Lukaku as well, by the way, just so we know, because the two boys seem to be on holiday. Probably you had one friend in the dressing room there, Chidgey. So
well, again, he came with a big rep, didn't he? I'm a bit more ambivalent about Ziyech. Apparently, he's very well liked in the dressing room.
I'd say so. Yeah, I'd say so.
He's okay, but what I don't like about him is his inconsistency. I mean, I don't mind inconsistency in young players. I mean, Werner's still quite young, Kai's young, Pulisic is young, Mount's young. Anybody who's watched football over a long period of time will know that when you're young, you may be really talented, but what you haven't got yet is consistency. So I don't mind that. But Ziyech is not young. He's an established football professional.
He's 29 going into next season.
You don't expect inconsistency from players who are that experienced.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So if you look at because I don't see us moving, we're not going to move a lot of players this year. Possibly Jorginho. Possibly, I know there's a lot of Italian, interest in him. I mean, I could see possibly one of Jorginho or Kante leaving if we were to get someone in, that Tuchel wants. Don't see it being Declan Rice this season, personally.
Not for 150 million.
Not a hope. Possibly that boy Milenkovic-Savic, which we've been linked with for quite a long time. I like the looks of him. But anyway, we're not here to talk transfers. The Raheem Sterling thing, I know a lot of people are against it. I personally am not against it. I see him filling a role in that, in Chelsea. I really do. But it depends. It depends on what other components come in. We got to look at Gallagher coming back. We got to look at the boy Levi Colwill possibly coming back as well. I know his camp have come out and kind of probably pissed Tuchel off a bit as well, and saying if he's not getting regular first team football, then he doesn't want to be there. So there could be a loan move in the cards for him. I don't know. Again, it's all pure speculation at this point. But do you think, for yourself, would you like to see us get away from that three at the back next year? Because quite clearly Tuchel wants to play his four. And
yeah, I do. But I'm afraid that's going to depend entirely on two things. One, who we've got in defence, because basically he plays back three because the players that he's inherited are much more, they're more suited to a back three, largely because they don't have much pace. And secondly, it'll depend on who's in midfield, because the other reason why he plays a back three is to protect Jorginho. I mean, Jorginho, whether you love him or hate him, is a superb player at what he does, but what he can't do, although I think this season he got a lot better at it.
Me too.
He's not really a physical midfield player.
No.
and he hasn't got any pace, so he gets rinsed if you know how to play a system that will exploit that, and that's what we used to see happening a lot. So that's why Tuchel plays 3 at the back. So I get that. So if you've got different midfield players, and which because really what we're saying is, what are you going to do, Tuchel? Are you going to play 3-4-3 or a variation of that, or are you going to play 4-3-3 or a variation of that? Yeah. So if he's got 3 in midfield, then it's almost back to like the double pivot, isn't it? But maybe not. But you can play Jorginho in a 3 if he's got cover in midfield, I think.
Yeah.
And and then also if he's got cover in midfield, then that defensive midfielder, a guy who is basically just doing that job, can also cover the 2 central defenders, while the other 2 are bombing up the flanks, which is what you would really want them to do. But actually, if you go back to where we started, which is, do we need a striker? I would say, yes, we do need a striker, because I think what we don't have is somebody who, like we wanted with Lukaku. I don't think that problem's gone away. What we've got is a situation where Lukaku didn't solve that problem. We still need a striker, or somebody who is clinical enough to score us 20 goals a season. Until we have that player, I really don't think we're going to challenge for the title. I know City have managed to do that, and I know Liverpool have managed to do it with their 3 very fluid strikers, and I accept that maybe that's what Tuchel's trying to do, so I could very well be wrong, but I'm a bit of an old git, and I grew up with strikers being able to score 20 goals a season.
Me too.
So I still think we need that. However, I think the bigger problem that we have is we don't have anybody who can bloody provide them with the chances, really. I don't think. I know you can look at the stats and I can be disproved here, there, and everywhere, but Diego Costa was phenomenal at Chelsea because he had Fabregas.
I was about to say number 4, Fabregas. Yeah. He's on a free now, by the way. Would you take him at 35?
Probably. I can probably run faster than him now. Didier Drogba was a phenomenal success at Chelsea because he had Frank Lampard providing the ammunition. You need a proper creative midfielder who can thread a pass, who can form a partnership with your proper number 9 striker, who can then can actually finish the bloody chance. At the moment, we don't have that player at all in the side, I don't think. And secondly, none of our strikers seem able to put away their chances regularly enough. Werner can't, and Kai can't, and they are nominally our other 2 strikers. So if I spent no other money this season, for me, it would be finding a creative midfield player who can link the midfield with the key striker. But I accept that that's maybe not what Tuchel wants to do. Maybe he does want to go 4-3-3 like Liverpool do. So have 3 very fluid type players. So you could have a Pulisic, a Havertz, a Werner, or a Mount could go in there as well. So you can swing it a lot of ways. But I think if you want a proper number 9, you've got to have a proper creative midfield player to supply them with the ammunition.
Yeah. I think that's the best way to end it. I think that's the best way to end it.
I'm only just started, Ian. We could do another. No, you've got to have dinner, right?
No, but let's call this part 1. Let's do it again next week or the week after, whenever you're free. Let's do it again, and we'll.
I'm free tomorrow night if you want, if you're around.
Cool. That sounds good.
Let's do fresh.
Exactly. Let's do that, and we'll look at maybe the next, for the whole part, we'll kind of draw up a couple of bits and look at what players we need to replace, whether it be a replacement for Rudiger.
Lovely.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Well, as I said, if you want to do it at 9 tomorrow, I am free. So
let's do it. My brother. Well, look, brilliant. Ladies and gentlemen, please do follow my guest. He's Stamford Chidge. He's actually at Stamford Chidge on Twitter. And of course at the Chelsea FanCast as well. Do follow them. Do support them as much as you possibly can, because it's an absolutely fantastic podcast. A real podcast by real Chelsea fans. And it's it's absolutely fantastic. And I'll put all the links below, of course, as well. So Mr. David Chidgey, I really appreciate you coming on today, my friend.
It's great fun. Ian, what could be better than just talking about Chelsea for about an hour? That's the best thing anybody can do, I think. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Absolutely, sir. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, we are the Chelsea Roar, of course, at the Chelsea Roar on Twitter as well. If you want to email the show, it's the chelsearoar@gmail.com. We're on Facebook and Instagram. We don't have much activity on Instagram or Facebook because I'm just too old for that. But if you want to get in touch with us, I will get the notification and I will respond.
You need a Dane. You need a Dane, Ian, to sort it all out. I
I'm
can't even
telling you.
understand Instagram, so I have to get Dane to do it for me.
I'm telling you, I just need to put up pictures of me smiling. Hey, here's me here. But no, 100% guys, thank you for the support and thank you for viewing this show today. And until the next 2 days, we're going to have Chidge on again. We are over and out.